Live Interactive English. Hello everyone, I'm Karen.
And I'm Matt. And today we're looking at part 2 of our article, El Dorado, the true story behind the lost city of gold.
That's right. So in part 1, we already learned quite a bit about El Dorado. We know that it's a city that is made of gold. Everything in it is gold, right?
Some people say that, yes.
That's right. And that is why many explorers have been trying to find this place because, of course, everyone wants to find gold, right?
And some explorers, even though they didn't find the gold, they traveled the length of the Amazon, and while others just lost their lives looking for this treasure.
Exactly. So how about like other lost cities? Are there any other lost cities that you have heard of?
So there have been some cities that were rediscovered. And a famous example is Machu Picchu in Peru. So a lot of tourists go there today, but it was only rediscovered about just over 110 years ago.
Really? Okay, so it's also a very interesting place to visit, right?
That's right, and they had to have someone, find it again because it was lost for so long. Another one is in Cambodia. The city of Angkor was also lost for hundreds of years before someone rediscovered it and found it again. So it is possible to find these kinds of lost cities.
So that's just like El Dorado, right?
And one more very famous one that people still look for today is the lost city of Atlantis.
Atlantis, and that's where you can find Aquaman.
That's right. So the story is that the city of Atlantis was an amazing city at the time which had very advanced technology, but then some sort of natural disaster caused the city to sink beneath the sea, and it's been lost ever since.
Wow, these stories are so fascinating.
So any of these cities could hold tons of treasures, and that's why people are searching for them today, and that's why it's interesting to continue learning about El Dorado, as we'll do after this.
All right.
Though most explorers were looking for a city, it is possible that El Dorado was not an actual place at all. According to some native legends, El Dorado was a king so rich that he covered himself in powdered gold all day. Another story describes El Dorado as a ceremony in which new chiefs of the Muisca people would throw gold and jewels into Lake Guatavita to mark the start of their rule.
So we're looking at part 2 of El Dorado, the true story behind the lost city of gold. We're going to learn more about this magical place.
All right, let's learn. Though most explorers were looking for a city, it is possible that El Dorado was not an actual place at all.
Oh no.
According to some native legends, El Dorado was a king so rich that he covered himself in powdered gold all day.
Oh, so this is another legend, right? Another story. Okay, so El Dorado was a king so rich that he covered himself in powdered gold. Legend, what's a legend?
So a legend is a story that many people believe to be true, but has not actually been proven to be true. It's not really known whether this is in fact true or not. Okay, so for example, the story of King Arthur is a famous British legend. So King Arthur, I think, was actually a real king, but his stories involve a lot of magic, which, might not be true.
Okay, and then powder, well, he covered himself, El Dorado, the king that was really rich, he covered himself in powdered gold, right? So to powder, that is a verb. So that just means sprinkle or cover yourself with powder. So what is powder? Powder basically, it just means the tiny, loose, solid grains. And then, so when you think about maybe something like baking powder, okay? And then that, or baby powder, powder, something that is so fine and so tiny, so small. So for example, the dry leaves were powdered down into dust.
Okay, so they're made into a powder or a dust, which is pretty much the same.
That's right. Okay, so another story describes El Dorado as a ceremony in which new chiefs of the Muisca people would throw gold and jewels into Lake Guatavita to mark the start of their rule. Okay, so this is another story, or we call it legend, right? People believe in. So ceremony is like a formal event on special occasions. So for example, you could have a graduation ceremony or a wedding ceremony.
So in this case, yeah, they're having their ceremony and they are throwing gold and jewels into this lake. So jewels are precious stones, so usually crystal stones, so things like maybe diamonds, rubies, emeralds, they're things that are very valuable to people, and they're often used to decorate maybe jewelry or other things that people wear, or just to make things pretty or ornate. You can add jewels.
That's right.
So for example, Kat wore a necklace with beautiful jewels to the party.
Many girls would love necklaces with jewels on them, or maybe rings or bracelets as well.
So people are throwing gold and jewels into this lake. So maybe people shouldn't be looking for this city, but should be looking for this lake so that you can swim to the bottom of the lake and find...
you can pick up the jewels and the gold.
All the gold and jewels.
You are absolutely right. So even until today, we still don't know if it's true, if it's real or a myth, right?
That's right. So many of these kinds of stories, it's hard to know if it is true or false because people often didn't write their histories as much.
Yes.
So most of the history would just be told from person to person, and that's how the conquistadors heard about this city. But there's no way for them to know for sure if this is a real place unless someone actually finds it.
That is true. Well, how about let's take a quick break and we'll come back to learn more about El Dorado.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。许多探险家试图寻找 El Dorado 这座城市，但是都失败了。那课文提到，黄金国可能根本不是一个真实的地方。根据一些当地的传说 ，El Dorado 是一位非常富有的国王，他整天都把自己涂满了金粉。那另外一个故事则是把 El Dorado 描述为一种典礼。那穆伊斯卡人的新酋长在典礼上会将黄金和宝石扔进瓜塔维塔湖，来标示着他们统治的开始。好，那么单字 legend 它表示传说或者是传奇人物。powder 当动词可以表达使变成粉末，或者是往什么什么上面擦粉。那它也可以当名词来表达粉末。再来 jewel 它表示宝石、珍宝。Matt 老师提到几种宝石，像 diamond 钻石、ruby 红宝石 ，emerald 绿宝石。那老师还有用到 ornate 这个形容词 ，ornate，ornate 表示装饰华丽的、富丽的或是华美的。那这边两个重点，我们进入文法时间。我们来看第一个重点是 describe somebody or something as 再加名词或形容词或动词 ing， 可以表达说将什么描述、形容为点点点。那么 describe 的意思就是描述、形容，在这边可以用 depict 来代换。例如 ，His neighbors described him as kind and helpful。邻居都说他善良而且乐于助人。那第二重点是介系词加上 which 或是 whom 的用法。受格关系代名词 which 或是 whom 所引导的关系子句，动词是不及物的话，而且后面还有介系词，那就是可以把这个介系词移到 which 或者是 whom 的前面。这时候关系代名词不能用 that 代替哦。以句型结构来看，原本是先行词加上 which、whom 或是 that， 那后面可能会有一个主词，再加上不及物动词，再加介系词。好，那现在我们把这个介系词就移到关系代名词前方，那会变成先行词加上 介系词，再加 which 或是 whom， 后面可能有一个主词，然后再加不及物动词。好，举例来说 ，The city which Sally lives in， 或者是 The city that Sally lives in is famous for its beautiful beaches. Sally 住的城市以美丽的海滩闻名。我们现在把介系词 in 移到关系代名词前方，那这时候 which 不能用 that 代替咯，所以会变成The city in which Sally lives is famous for its beautiful beaches. 好，那这话课文中。
Surprisingly, this last story may be close to the truth. Lake Guatavita is a real place in Colombia, and many Muisca people still live there today. In the 1960s, a small golden raft dating back hundreds of years was discovered. Historians believe it depicts a ritual taking place on water, one that is shockingly similar to the stories of the Muisca ceremonies. It is for this reason that the item is often referred to as the Golden Raft of El Dorado. We may never know the full truth behind the story of El Dorado, but whether it's a long-dead king, an ancient ritual, or a city full of riches, there will always be people willing to risk everything for the promise of gold.
Welcome back, everyone. So before the break, we were learning about El Dorado. And we know that many explorers were trying to find that place, but it was never really found. But there were other legends or stories about El Dorado as well. For example, there was a legend about El Dorado being the king, and he was so rich that he would always cover himself in powdered gold. And another one being that El Dorado being a ceremony, and the new chiefs of the Muisca people would throw gold and jewels into Lake Guatavita to mark the start of their rule. So maybe there are other stories about El Dorado too.
Well, let's find out. Surprisingly, this last story, that's the one about throwing things into the lake, may be close to the truth. Lake Guatavita is a real place in Colombia, and many Muisca people still live there today. In the 1960s, a small golden raft dating back hundreds of years was discovered.
A golden raft. So is it like a small boat?
A raft is kind of like a boat. It just needs to be something that floats on the water, that is usually floats well enough to support people to be on top of it. So it can even just be a flat raft, which is something made of wood, or I imagine this was probably made of wood and covered in gold in some way.
Golden raft. That sounds really cool. So that was discovered, right? Okay, historians believe it depicts a ritual taking place on water, one that is shockingly similar to the stories of the Muisca ceremonies. Okay. So historians believe it depicts a ritual. So historians, that is a noun. They are people who are trained in history. They study history. And usually they will pick a particular time or era to study, and they might even write books or articles on it to help people understand more about the past. So, for example, the historian spent years studying ancient Egypt. So maybe this historian would understand a lot of things, a lot of facts about the ancient Egypt.
It is for this reason that the item is often referred to as the Golden Raft of El Dorado. Okay, so they've actually named it this, the Golden Raft of El Dorado. We know that because that's how they referred to it as. So to refer is to mention something or someone in speech or in writing. And to refer to someone or something as something else means that you've given them another name, or there's another word that you call them. So for example, I am so close with my friend, I often refer to him as my brother.
So it's kind of like you call him your brother, right?
I call him my brother. So they call this raft the golden raft of El Dorado.
That is right. Okay, we may never know the full truth behind the story of El Dorado, but whether it's a long dead king, an ancient ritual, or a city full of riches, there will always be people willing to risk everything for the promise of gold. And that is absolutely true. I think that is, really, really tempting. If you think, oh, there's a city that is made of gold, of course, everyone will want to try to find it, right?
Right. So I guess that's what you would want to find it, I guess is what you're saying. But we have a what do you think question, which is, would you have risked your life to find El Dorado?
Well, risking my life to find El Dorado. I mean, I do like gold, but I don't know about risking my life. I have my family here. I have my friends here. I think my family and friends are more important than finding gold.
Okay.
How about you? Would you have risked your life to find El Dorado?
Would I have or will I? That's the real question.
That's true.
So, I think any kind of something with a high reward usually has a high risk also.
Exactly.
So if you're not really going to have a lot of reward for something if you don't take a lot of risk. So that's why I think it might be worth it, and maybe I will search for the city of El Dorado next time I have some time off work to travel to South America.
Really? Okay, well, just remember one thing. Stay safe.
Well, I have to take enough risk to get the big reward, so I don't think that's possible.
Okay, that's true. Okay, well, this is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and I really hope you enjoyed learning about El Dorado. And we'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
好，刚刚说有一个故事是把 El Dorado 描述为一种典礼。那穆伊斯卡人的新酋长在典礼上会把黄金和宝石扔进瓜塔维塔湖，标示着他们统治的开始。那这个故事可能接近事实哦。瓜塔维塔湖是哥伦比亚的一个真实地方，而许多的穆伊斯卡人现今仍然居住在那里。在1960年代，人们发现一艘距今有好几百年历史的小金筏。历史学家认为呢，它描绘了一种在水上进行的仪式，那这就跟这个穆伊斯卡典礼的故事相似嘛。于是这个物品常被称为黄金国的黄金筏。好，课文写到说，我们也许永远不会知道黄金国故事背后的全部真相。那无论如何，总是会有人愿意为了得到黄金而冒一切的危险。毕竟黄金财富是很诱人的啊。那么 Karen 老师刚刚用到 tempting。Tempting， tempting 它是形容诱人的、吸引人的。好，那么课文单字 historian 它表示历史学家。refer 这个动词可以表达提到、论及，也可以表达称什么什么为。那我们就可以用 refer to somebody or something 加上 as 再加名词或形容词去表达称某人事物为什么什么。好，那以上今天的讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
Though most explorers were looking for a city, it is possible that El Dorado was not an actual place at all. According to some native legends, El Dorado was a king so rich that he covered himself in powdered gold all day. Another story describes El Dorado as a ceremony in which new chiefs of the Muisca people would throw gold and jewels into Lake Guatavita to mark the start of their rule. Surprisingly, this last story may be close to the truth. Lake Guatavita is a real place in Colombia, and many Muisca people still live there today. In the 1960s, a small golden raft, dating back hundreds of years, was discovered. Historians believe it depicts a ritual taking place on water, one that is shockingly similar to the stories of the Muisca ceremonies. It is for this reason that the item is often referred to as the Golden Raft of El Dorado. We may never know the full truth behind the story of El Dorado, but whether it's a long-dead king, an ancient ritual, or a city full of riches, there will always be people willing to risk everything for the promise of gold.
Hello, everybody. Welcome Today we're taking a look at Taitung Seashore Park. Now, this park is located on the coast of Taitung. So why don't we call it Taitung Coast Park? Well, you could say Taitung Coastal Park. A coast is the same as a seashore. And you could also, in fact, say shoreline or coastline. All this means it's just where the water meets the land. Well, let's get into today's lesson. Taitung Seashore Park is one of the best places to visit on Taidung's coast. There, visitors can see some amazing art too. For example, the Shangyang tree is the center point of the park. The roof there is actually made of wood. The wave pattern on the roof represents the flow of the ocean and the mountains. That's pretty cool. Every night at 8 and 9 p.m., there is a music and light show. How much fun is that? So make sure to stop and take a picture at one of the most popular photo spots here. You can visit Taitung Seashore Park anytime. It's open all year round. Sounds like this is the perfect place to take some great pictures and selfies. Also, they have a music and light show at night. It can't get any better than that, so you can enjoy the whole day there. See you next time.